He thought walking away would keep her safe, until a single message shattered his empire. A burning hospital, a missing woman, and a newborn carrying his name. Now the coldest Mafia boss will face the past he buried in blood. But when love returns, wearing scars and secrets, even death won't end what began in the fire. The night was cruelly quiet, the kind of quiet that seeps into the bones and makes even the air feel heavy. Rain lashed against the glass walls of Rebirth's penthouse, streaking down like silver veins under the city lights. He sat by the window, a half-finished glass of whiskey resting in his hand, watching the city that both worshipped and feared him. Power, money, control. He had it all, yet the silence inside that luxurious cage was unbearable. Every sound in the distance, sirens, thunder, laughter from the streets below, reminded him of what he'd lost long ago, though he never allowed himself to name it. To the world, Rebirth was untouchable, a myth wrapped in danger. But beneath the tailored suit and cold eyes, a ghost lingered, one with her smile. His phone vibrated once, a small tremor in the stillness. He almost ignored it. Business came at all hours and nothing ever surprised him anymore. But something, a pull he couldn't explain, made him reach for it. The name on the screen froze his heartbeat. Emily. He hadn't seen that name in months, years even, though he'd counted the days like a sinner counting sins. His thumb hesitated over the screen, 100 memories flashing in a single heartbeat, her laughter echoing in his old house, her scent on his shirts, her tears the night he walked away. He told himself he'd forgotten her, but when the message opened, his world stopped. The photo hit him like a bullet. Emily, pale and trembling, lay in a hospital bed, a newborn pressed against her chest. The room was sterile and dim, but her eyes, God, her eyes, still carried the warmth that once melted his armor. The baby's tiny fingers were curled against her heart, wrapped in a blanket so white it looked unreal. For a moment, Rebirth forgot how to breathe. He leaned back, the air leaving his lungs as though he'd been punched. The city outside blurred, and the glass in his hand trembled. The woman he thought he'd lost forever had brought life into this world. His life. His chest tightened painfully. The glass slipped from his fingers, shattering across the marble floor, scattering whiskey like spilled truth. The scent of alcohol filled the room, but all he could smell was her. Memory, pain, regret. He gripped the edge of the table, knuckles turning white. Could it be? The baby's eyes? They were his. The same sharp gray with a storm hidden behind them. He wanted to deny it, to push away the thought that clawed at his sanity. But denial was a luxury he had long abandoned. Rebirth. The man who feared nothing suddenly feared the image on his phone. He replayed every moment. The night he'd left her, the argument that tore them apart, the words he'd thrown like knives. He told himself he did it to protect her. The enemies closing in, the danger his world carried. It was the only way to keep her safe. But staring at that fragile image, he realized he hadn't saved her. He'd condemned her to face it alone. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it echo through the walls. Outside, thunder roared, and the lightning illuminated the penthouse, his reflection flashing back at him in the glass, eyes wide with guilt. His phone buzzed again, a single vibration that snapped him out of his trance, a message from the same number. Hands shaking, he opened it, expecting another photo. Maybe a plea, maybe a goodbye. But it was blank, just a single empty notification. The silence after it was unbearable. He stood, pacing, heart racing with a confusion he hadn't felt in years. Should he call her? Would she answer? Did she even want him to? Every possible answer cut deeper than the last. His chest burned with questions, and a terror that maybe he was already too late. He finally hit the call button. The dial tone seemed to stretch forever, each beep dragging him further into a hell he thought he'd left behind. He clenched his jaw, his pulse hammering in his throat. Then, a click. Someone answered. But it wasn't her. The voice that came through the speaker froze his blood. Low, mocking, familiar. "She doesn't belong to you anymore, Rebirth." The words dripped with venomous amusement, like someone savoring a cruel victory. For a moment, Rebirth couldn't speak. The sound of that voice dragged buried memories back to life. Betrayal, fire, gunshots, and a friend's laughter turning into treachery. His grip tightened around the phone until it creaked. "Who is this?" he demanded, though he already knew. There was a pause, long enough to taste danger. Then a soft chuckle came, sharp as broken glass. "You really don't recognize me. I'm disappointed." The line crackled. And before Rebirth could answer, the voice whispered, "You lost her once because you thought you were protecting her. This time, she's not yours to save." The call ended, leaving static in the air and silence heavy enough to crush him. For a long time, Rebirth didn't move. He just stood there, staring at his reflection. A man who had conquered cities but couldn't protect the only thing that mattered. He lowered the phone slowly, his fingers trembling. That voice, that unmistakable voice, belonged to someone he'd buried in memory and hatred. Lorenzo. The name cut through his mind like a knife. Once his most trusted ally, his brother in everything but blood, until greed and jealousy poisoned it all. The man who vanished after betraying him, the man who wanted Emily. The air around Rebirth seemed to tighten. The storm outside now roaring like a mirror to the one inside him. He could almost hear the echo of that laughter still ringing through his mind, taunting, cruel. For a second, he wondered if this was some elaborate trick, a ghost from his past trying to tear open old wounds. But then his gaze fell back to the phone, to the photo still glowing on the screen. Emily's tired smile, the baby's eyes, real, tangible, alive. Every instinct in him, the cold, calculating instincts of a Mafia king, ignited. Someone had dared touch what was his. Someone had taken her, and they wanted him to know. His pulse steadied, turning his chaos into focus, his pain into fury. He moved across the room, each step measured but heavy with purpose. The air hummed with danger. He picked up the shattered pieces of glass, his palms slicing open. He didn't even flinch as blood mixed with whiskey on the marble, a crimson vow forming silently in the dark. For the first time in years, the cold mask cracked, revealing the man beneath the legend. If she's alive, I'll find her. If he's touched her, I'll end him. Thunder split the sky again, and the city lights flickered like dying stars. In the reflection of the window, Rebirth saw the man he had become, ruthless, untouchable, feared. But now he saw something else glinting in those gray eyes, desperation, the kind that destroys empires and ignites wars. He knew that this night would change everything because no one, not even the ghosts of his past, could take her from him again. He picked up the photo once more, tracing her face on the screen, the curve of her lips trembling in exhaustion. He whispered her name, a sound so soft it barely escaped his throat. The storm outside answered him, wind rattling the windows as if warning him of the path ahead. A chill crawled down his spine, but he didn't care. He'd already stepped into the fire once. This time, he'd burn the world to bring her back. Somewhere in the distance, lightning illuminated the skyline, and in that fleeting flash, Rebirth swore he saw her face reflected in the glass, a haunting illusion of the woman he loved, fading as quickly as it appeared. His breath caught, and for a heartbeat, the coldest man alive felt the weight of fear, not for his life, but for the chance that she might already be gone. And then, the echo of that laughter returned in his head, chilling, familiar, the same laughter that had followed him the day his best friend betrayed him and vanished into the shadows. The storm outside howled louder, and the Empire's king knew. The war he buried 7 months ago had just begun. The storm outside hadn't faded. It had only grown angrier, as if the heavens themselves were warning Rebirth that the past he buried was clawing its way back to life. The rain drummed violently against the glass walls of the penthouse, flashes of lightning slicing through the darkness like blades. Rebirth stood in the center of his living room, the broken glass still glittering at his feet. His mind replayed the voice on the phone, the laughter that curdled his blood. Lorenzo, the name whispered through the storm like a curse. It wasn't just betrayal returning. It was vengeance wearing an old friend's face. He turned sharply, his coat swirling behind him as he walked toward his private office. A fortress within his empire, lined with weapons, monitors, and secrets that could bring nations to their knees. His footsteps echoed like gunshots on the marble floor. His jaw was locked, the veins in his temple throbbing. Lorenzo. The one man he trusted with everything. The one who vanished after stealing his money, his men, and his peace. And now, the same man had Emily. The same man had dared speak her name. Rebirth's hand slammed against the biometric lock, and the steel door hissed open. Inside, the glow of monitors bathed his face in cold blue light. Dozens of security feeds, encrypted files, maps of the city. All symbols of his control. But tonight, control felt like an illusion. He tore off his gloves and barked an order into the intercom. "Trace the number. Now." Within seconds, his men responded from the underground command center below the penthouse. "On it, boss." Rebirth leaned over the desk, his reflection shimmering faintly on the polished surface. The reflection of a man who once believed he was untouchable. Minutes crawled by like hours. Each tick of the clock stretched his patience thinner. The rain outside blurred the skyline into smears of gray and gold, and thunder kept rolling like a restless drumbeat. "Report!" he demanded. Static crackled through the speakers. The numbers bouncing through multiple relays, rerouting from 5 locations at once, one of his men said, voice tense. "It's like chasing a ghost." Rebirth's eyes narrowed. A ghost. That's what Lorenzo had always been. A man who could vanish in a crowd, erase his tracks before anyone even realized he was gone. And now it seemed he had mastered the art of disappearing completely. He slammed his fist on the desk, the sound sharp and violent. "Keep tracing," he barked, but deep down he already knew. Lorenzo was taunting him. It wasn't a mistake that he'd answered that call. It was a message, a declaration of war. The silence that followed was suffocating. Rebirth turned away from the monitors, pacing across the office. The rain outside painted streaks of silver down the glass walls, mirroring the tension twisting inside him. "Why her?" he muttered under his breath. He didn't need an answer. He knew it already. Lorenzo had always wanted what was his loyalty, his position, his woman. He stopped in front of the large mirror that hung behind his desk. A silent judge reflecting every piece of the man he'd become. The reflection that stared back wasn't that of a calm, collected leader. It was of a man unraveling. His hand went to his tie, loosening it as he exhaled through clenched teeth. 7 months, he murmured. The words tasted like poison. 7 months she carried my child? Alone? His voice broke slightly on the last word. The admission hit harder than any bullet could. He gripped the edge of the desk until his knuckles went white, his reflection blurring through tears he refused to let fall. In his mind he saw her. Emily, fragile but strong, walking through nights without him, carrying their child with no one to hold her, no one to fight beside her. The thought crushed him. His empire, the thing he built to protect her from, had become the very reason she suffered. His own reflection looked back at him, accusing, cruel. For once, the man who had ordered hundreds of deaths, who had stared into the eyes of monsters without flinching, felt something close to fear. Not of Lorenzo, not of the world, but of the guilt eating him alive. A knock shattered the silence. Hard, urgent. Rebirth turned sharply, his eyes instantly cold again. The switch from broken man to mafia boss so seamless it was terrifying. "Enter," he said, voice low but lethal. The door opened and one of his guards stepped in, soaked from the rain, his face pale and strained. "Boss, you need to see this," the man said, holding a tablet with trembling hands. Rebirth snatched it, his patience long gone. On the screen, grainy footage flickered, the remains of a building engulfed in flames. The sign, barely visible through smoke and chaos, read, "St. Mercy's Hospital." Rebirth's heartbeat stopped for a moment. The same hospital where Emily's photo had been taken. His jaw clenched as the guard continued. "The fire broke out last night. They say it started in the maternity ward. Everyone's files, records, everything. Gone." The words sliced through him like a blade. He zoomed in on the footage, his mind spinning. The walls were blackened, the roof collapsed. Firefighters were pulling out bodies wrapped in white sheets. A chill raced through his veins. He could almost hear the echo of the baby's cry from the photo, now silenced by smoke. He looked up, voice deadly calm. "What about her?" The guard hesitated. "No record, sir. No patient by that name. Not in any database." Rebirth's breath hitched. His vision darkened with rage. Someone had gone to great lengths to erase her existence. Not just her, but their child. His fingers tightened around the tablet until it cracked. He didn't even notice the blood running down his palm. His guard's voice trembled. "There's more. The fire wasn't an accident. It was arson." For a heartbeat, time itself seemed to stop. Rebirth's head tilted slightly, his eyes glinting like steel. "Who?" he asked softly. "We don't know yet, but—" The man swallowed. The security footage was wiped. The only thing left on the drive was a message. He handed Rebirth a small chip. Rebirth inserted it into the screen. Static flickered. Then a single line appeared. Blood-red letters on black. "You can't erase guilt, but I can erase her. L." Rebirth's pulse roared in his ears. His chest tightened as fury surged through him, raw and consuming. Lorenzo had made it personal. He wasn't just after revenge. He wanted to destroy every trace of Emily's existence, to erase her from Rebirth's world entirely. "He's playing with fire," Rebirth muttered, voice trembling with restrained violence. The guard stepped back instinctively, sensing the storm about to break inside his boss. The air itself felt heavier, as if even the walls were holding their breath. He turned to the window again, watching lightning split the sky in violent bursts. 7 months, he whispered again, almost to himself, and he touched what's mine. His reflection in the glass no longer looked human. It was the face of vengeance itself. The city below flickered under the storm, and Rebirth's heart beat in time with the thunder. Every part of him that once felt love now burned with a single purpose: find her, destroy him. He grabbed his coat and headed for the door, his voice sharp. "Get me every contact in the city. I don't care who burns. I want Lorenzo found." His guard nodded and rushed out, barking orders into his earpiece. The entire penthouse came alive. Lights, screens, movement. Rebirth's empire had gone silent for months, but tonight it stirred again like a sleeping beast awakened. His steps echoed as he returned to the desk, staring at the flickering footage of the burned hospital. His reflection stared back at him, eyes hollow yet blazing with fury. "Someone's erasing her past," he whispered, a cold smile curving his lips. "But I'll rewrite their future." Thunder exploded overhead, shaking the glass walls as if the storm itself bowed to his rage. In that moment, Rebirth felt the first flicker of something darker than hate. A promise. He would tear through every shadow of the city to find her, even if it meant facing the ghost he once called brother. Outside, lightning illuminated the skyline again, painting the night in white fire. The storm raged on, and somewhere beneath it the ghost of Lorenzo moved unseen, already one step ahead. Rebirth's eyes lifted from the burning hospital footage, realization striking like thunder. Someone wasn't just after Emily. They were erasing every trace of her from his world, starting with her past. 3. The rain refused to stop. It fell in relentless sheets, drenching the city in sorrow. The night had turned from storm to madness, and Rebirth was at its center. A predator in motion, his car slicing through flooded streets like a bullet. The engine roared beneath him, the sound echoing his fury. Each drop that hit the windshield felt like a memory. Fragments of a love he couldn't bury, pounding against the glass, demanding to be seen. The wipers struggled to keep up, but even they couldn't clear the fog that clouded his vision. Emily's face kept appearing between the flashes of lightning, faint, trembling, unreachable. The GPS tracker on his screen blinked faintly, the last known location of St. Mercy's Hospital. But what awaited him there was no longer a hospital. It was a graveyard. As he approached, the air thickened with smoke and ash, and the faint smell of burning flesh hung heavy in the rain. Red and blue lights flickered through the darkness, emergency crews still swarming the site, trying to extinguish what remained. He slowed the car, eyes narrowing through the mist. Charred ruins, twisted metal, walls collapsed inward like broken ribs. It was no accident. It was precision. Someone had made sure nothing survived. He stepped out of the car, the cold rain instantly soaking through his shirt, clinging to his skin. The ground beneath his shoes was slick with mud and soot. Each step left a print that disappeared beneath the downpour. His men followed behind silently, their faces hidden under hoods, weapons ready but unneeded. The real war tonight wasn't against bullets, it was against ghosts. Rebirth's gaze swept across the wreckage, his eyes catching faint flickers of dying embers in the rubble. The storm hissed as it met the fire's last breath, steam rising like the souls of those lost. Then, something metallic glinted under a collapsed beam. His instincts reacted before his mind could. He crouched, pushing aside blackened debris with his bare hands. The heat bit at his skin, but he didn't care. His fingers brushed against a cold, familiar shape, a thin chain, tangled, half-melted but unmistakable. He pulled it free, his heart twisting violently as he recognized it. A silver bracelet, the one he had given Emily long ago on a night when love had still been simple. The engraving was faint but still visible beneath the soot. "To my chaos are." His throat tightened. The storm faded from his awareness. The world shrank to that one small object, fragile and cold in his hand. Memories bled through, her laughter. The way she had looked at him when he first clasped it around her wrist. "Chaos suits you," he'd told her then, "because you make even destruction look beautiful." Now it was all that remained of her. His hand trembled as he closed his fist around it, the sharp edge cutting into his skin. Blood mixed with rain, dripping onto the ground like a silent vow. His men stood behind him, watching, uncertain whether to speak. No one had ever seen him like this. Silent, motionless, eyes hollow and burning at the same time. Then, without looking back, he said, "Someone did this to hide her, maybe even to erase her." His voice was low, almost calm, but that calm was deadlier than rage. He turned slightly, the rain tracing the hard lines of his jaw. "Find her," he commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I don't care what it costs. I don't care who we burn to do it." The order spread like wildfire. His men scattered through the wreckage, searching, questioning, bribing the trembling survivors who lingered near the barricades. Rebirth stayed still, staring at the bracelet in his palm, his reflection flickering in the puddles at his feet, the reflection of a man slipping further from control. The rain blurred the edges of his vision, but nothing could wash away the crimson mark left by the cut across his hand. It stung, but he welcomed the pain. It was proof he was still alive, proof that she might still be too. A faint sound broke through the chaos. A scream, no, a cry, soft, fragile, almost lost beneath the storm. Rebirth's head snapped up, his senses sharpening like blades. He turned toward the sound, scanning the ruins, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. His boots splashed through puddles as he ran, ignoring the shouts of his men behind him. The sound came again, faint but distinct, a child's cry. Each echo drove him faster, deeper into the destruction. The closer he got, the heavier the air seemed to grow, until even breathing felt like punishment. He stopped near what was left of a corridor, the walls charred and crumbling. The cry had stopped. Only the storm answered him now. He strained to listen, every muscle tense. Then, a faint rustle. He pushed aside a burnt door and stepped into what had once been a patient room. The stench of smoke and chemicals made his eyes sting. Broken glass crunched beneath his shoes. His flashlight flickered across the floor. And there, amid the ashes, lay something small and red. A piece of cloth? No. He crouched and picked it up. It was a note. Stained, crumpled, soaked in blood. His name was written across it. Rebirth. The letters were jagged, almost carved into the paper with trembling hands. His pulse thundered in his ears. He unfolded it carefully, afraid it might fall apart from the moisture. The message inside was short, but it struck like a bullet. You're close, but every step you take brings her further away. His hand trembled as he stared at the words. The paper smelled of smoke and iron, and something else. Perfume. Emily's scent. Faint but real. He closed his eyes, his chest tightening painfully. She had been here, alive, near enough that the scent still lingered. His mind raced. Was she running? Was she taken again? The note wasn't a warning. It was a game. Lorenzo was playing with him, leaving breadcrumbs in blood. Rebirth crushed the note in his fist, his voice breaking through the storm. He's watching us, he said, half to himself, half to the wind. He's here. His men exchanged uneasy glances, weapons ready. Lock down the perimeter, he ordered. Check every building within a mile. He wants me to chase. Let's make sure he runs instead. His voice was sharp, but his eyes betrayed him. A flicker of fear, of desperate hope. Every second mattered. Every delay could mean losing her forever. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the ruins, and in that instant he thought he saw movement near the far end of the debris. A silhouette, tall, still, watching. His hand went to his gun instantly, the metallic click echoing through the storm. There, he shouted, sprinting forward, mud splashing under his boots. The silhouette turned, and for a split second, a glint of light caught a silver chain around the figure's neck. Familiar, Lorenzo's. But before Rebirth could fire, the figure vanished into the smoke. He chased until his lungs burned, the rain blinding him, his heart screaming her name in silence. When he finally stopped, all that was left was darkness and the echo of his own breath. His men caught up, panting, scanning the area. "Boss, there's no one here," one of them shouted. But Rebirth knew what he saw. Lorenzo had been there. He had wanted to be seen. It was another message, another ghost taunting the living. Rebirth turned back toward the ruins, his coat heavy with rain and ash. He looked down at the blood-stained note once more. The writing was beginning to fade under the storm, the ink dissolving like tears. "You're close," it had said. But close to what? To her? Or to losing her again? His heart felt like it was tearing apart inside his chest. He took a long, shuddering breath and whispered under his breath, "If you want a war, Lorenzo, I'll bring you one." He slid the note into his coat pocket beside the bracelet. One carried her name, the other her memory. Two fragile things he would kill to protect. He turned to his men, eyes hard. "We leave nothing behind," he said coldly. "Every lead, every rumor, follow it. No sleep until we find her." His men nodded and dispersed into the storm once more. For a moment he stood alone among the ruins, the smoke curling around him like whispers of the dead. The world had taken everything from him once, but now it had taken her again. The rain fell harder, blurring the city lights until it all looked like fire reflected in water. Rebirth closed his eyes and tilted his head to the sky, letting the rain wash over his face. "You can erase her name," he muttered, voice breaking, "but you'll never erase her from me." Then in the distance, thunder cracked again, louder, closer, almost like laughter carried on the wind. He opened his eyes, and for a brief, haunting second, he thought he saw words burned faintly into the side of the remaining hospital wall. When lightning struck again, he realized he wasn't imagining it. "Stop chasing ghosts, Rebirth. She doesn't belong in your world anymore." His breath caught. His pulse froze. The message was carved deep into the concrete, recent, deliberate, and the blood dripping down from the last word was still fresh. The storm roared louder, the city trembling beneath its fury, and Rebirth knew one thing. Lorenzo wasn't just ahead of him, he was everywhere. As Rebirth stepped closer to the wall, his boot pressed against something soft beneath the ashes. A bloodied envelope sealed with wax, and on it, one word written in red: "Mine." 4. The bloodied envelope lay beneath his boot, half buried in ash, as if the earth itself was trying to hide it from him. For a moment, Rebirth couldn't move. The rain hammered against his shoulders, dripping from his hair, his coat, but he stood frozen, staring down at that single word burned into the wax seal: "Mine." The crimson letters glistened wetly, their edges jagged, deliberate. He crouched slowly, his gloved fingers trembling as he reached for it. The seal cracked under pressure, breaking the silence of the storm with a faint snap that sounded far too loud in the chaos around him. Inside was a note, one small piece of paper, creased, smeared, the ink bleeding into the edges like veins. Only one sentence was written there, but it hit harder than any bullet ever could. "You left her once, Rebirth. This time she won't wait." The words blurred as the rain hit them, the ink spreading like bruises on the paper. His heart stopped for a second, then started again, violently. Lorenzo's handwriting. Sharp, angled, cruelly familiar. He could almost hear that smug tone in his head, the voice of a man who knew exactly how to twist a knife and make it feel personal. Rebirth's fingers tightened around the note until it tore slightly, his breath coming unevenly. That single line wasn't just a message. It was a mirror reflecting everything he'd tried to bury. He had left her, not because he didn't love her, but because he loved her too much to let her drown in his darkness. But now that very act of protection had become his sin. Rebirth stumbled backward, his vision swimming. The storm seemed louder now, thunder cracking like a warning. He dragged in a breath, but it felt like shards of glass cutting through his lungs. His men watched from a distance, sensing the shift in him, the moment where rage turned into something deeper, more dangerous. He moved toward his car without a word, the note still clutched in his fist. The door slammed shut behind him, isolating him in the cocoon of darkness and rain-specked glass. Inside, the world was silent except for the sound of his own breathing, harsh, uneven. The city lights outside flickered through the windshield, painting his face in flashes of gold and shadow. He opened his palm and stared at the note again. Those words burned through his skull. "You left her once." He whispered it aloud, as if saying it could make it less real. But it didn't. The weight of guilt was suffocating. He leaned back, his head against the seat, and for the first time in years, his control faltered completely. His mind dragged him backward, to the night he walked away from Emily. The memory hit like a gunshot, her standing at the doorway, tears in her eyes, her voice trembling as she said, "If you walk out that door, don't come back." He hadn't looked back that night. He couldn't. But he'd heard the sound of her breaking as the door closed behind him. That sound had followed him ever since. Through every deal, every fight, every empty night he spent pretending to forget. He thought leaving her had kept her safe. But now, she was living through the hell he'd tried to protect her from, and he was the reason why. His phone buzzed suddenly on the dashboard, snapping him back to the present. A flash of light on the screen illuminated the interior of the car. Unknown number. His chest tightened as he stared at it, a strange dread crawling through him. He hesitated only for a second before answering. "Rebirth," he said, voice hoarse, barely more than a whisper. No one replied, just silence. Heavy, deliberate, suffocating. Then the call dropped. He frowned, his finger hovering over the screen when the phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a call. It was a message, a video file. He stared at it for a long moment, the preview image frozen. Dark, grainy, a faint silhouette that made his pulse spike. His thumb hovered above the screen, hesitation twisting in his chest. He knew what it could be. He also knew he couldn't not watch it. He pressed play. The screen flickered to life, static humming softly, then cleared, revealing a dimly lit room. The light was dull and yellow, like the dying glow of an old lamp. Shadows danced across cracked walls, and there she was, Emily, sitting on the floor wrapped in a thin blanket, her arms cradling a small bundle. The baby, her baby, his baby. His breath caught, the air rushing from his lungs. She looked exhausted, her face pale, her eyes red and swollen, strands of hair clinging to her cheeks. Yet even broken, she was heartbreakingly beautiful. "Emily," he whispered, his hand trembling as if reaching through the glass could pull her closer. She lifted her gaze toward the camera. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak. "Please." Her voice was barely above a whisper, hoarse from crying. "Don't come for me." Her fingers tightened around the baby, holding him close as if the world itself was trying to take him away. "They'll kill you," she continued, her voice breaking on the last word. The sound shredded something deep inside him. Rebirth's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles turned white. "Who's making you say that?" he growled under his breath. "Emily, look at me." But she couldn't hear him. The video was pre-recorded, a message meant to shatter him, to trap him between rage and helplessness. In the background, faint noises stirred, the creak of footsteps, the soft hum of a generator, maybe even breathing that wasn't hers. The camera shook slightly, as if whoever was filming had moved closer. Emily's eyes darted toward something off-screen, panic flashing in her expression. Rebirth leaned forward instinctively, his heart hammering. "Don't turn, don't," he muttered to himself. But she did. Her gaze shifted to the side, fear widening her eyes. The video quality crackled, flickered, and then froze for a heartbeat before resuming. A shadow moved behind her, tall, broad, slow. It stretched across the wall like death itself, and even through the distortion, Rebirth could see the unmistakable glint of metal. A gun. His entire body went rigid. "No." The word tore from his throat, raw, desperate. "No." The video glitched violently, static lines slashing across the screen, and then it cut off, black. The sound of rain hitting the car roof filled the silence, mocking him. He sat there staring at the blank screen, waiting for it to come back, for something, anything to happen. But nothing did. For several seconds, he didn't move. The only sound in the car was the rapid, shallow rhythm of his breathing. His heart felt like it was about to tear through his chest. His fingers shook as he rewound the video, replaying it again and again, hoping he'd see something he missed, a clue, a background noise, anything that could lead him to her. But every time it ended the same way, with that shadow, that gun, and the screen going black. Rebirth slammed his fist against the dashboard, the sound echoing in the confined space. "Lorenzo!" he shouted, his voice shaking with fury and pain. "If you touch her—" His words broke off, swallowed by the storm. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to breathe, his vision blurred with unshed rage. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was survival. For her, for their child, for the part of his soul he'd thought was dead. He replayed the first frame of the video again and paused, zoomed in. The wall behind Emily had a faint mark, a logo, maybe graffiti, barely visible under the poor lighting. His jaw tightened. It looked like a serpent curled around a dagger, the emblem of a syndicate he'd destroyed years ago. But how was it back now? His mind raced. Either Lorenzo had rebuilt it, or worse, someone else had, and Lorenzo had joined them. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was an alliance built on revenge. Rebirth's thoughts spiraled, fury giving way to determination. He started the car, the engine growling like an animal ready to strike. The tires splashed through puddles as he sped into the night, one hand gripping the steering wheel, the other still clutching the bloodstained note. The city blurred past him, neon and rain blending into streaks of chaos. His reflection in the windshield looked like a stranger. Hollow eyes, clenched jaw, the face of a man who had nothing left to lose. The note on the passenger seat fluttered from the air vent's breeze, and he caught it before it fell. He stared at it one last time. "You left her once, Rebirth. This time, she won't wait." He exhaled slowly. "You're wrong," he murmured. "She'll wait, because I'm not leaving her again." The phone buzzed again suddenly, startling him. Another message. This time, no video. Just a single line of text. "You still don't understand, brother. She's not running from me. She's hiding from you." Rebirth's eyes widened. The car swerved slightly before he gripped the wheel tighter, his knuckles whitening. The message sank into his mind like venom. He could hear Lorenzo's mocking voice behind those words, the tone drenched in truth and deception both. For the first time, doubt flickered in his chest. What if Emily really was afraid of him? He shoved the thought away instantly. No, she loved him. She had always loved him. But the message had done its job. It had cracked something inside him, just enough to let the uncertainty in. He drove faster, the rain turning into a blur. Every instinct screamed that the game had just changed, that this wasn't just about saving Emily anymore. It was about discovering the truth that might destroy him. And somewhere in the distance, as if fate itself was listening, thunder rolled again, a cruel echo of laughter following him into the dark. Rebirth's phone buzzed once more. He glanced at the screen, a live location link. Coordinates. His pulse quickened, but as soon as he tapped it open, a single image appeared. Emily's bracelet lying in a pool of blood. The image on his phone burned through his mind. Emily's silver bracelet lying in a pool of blood. The world around him went silent. The car engine hummed, the rain roared, but all he could hear was the faint echo of his own heartbeat, thundering inside his skull. His hands clenched the steering wheel so tightly, his knuckles turned white. That bracelet had been his promise, to protect her, to never let her fall alone. Now it was a symbol of everything he had failed to do. He slammed the gas pedal, the tires screeching against wet asphalt as he tore through the empty highway. The storm blurred the road ahead, but his focus was razor sharp. Every drop of rain on the windshield felt like a countdown, each one whispering her name, each one reminding him that he might already be too late. His phone buzzed again, a voice message distorted by static. A faint sound played, Emily's breath. Then silence, then a man's low chuckle. Lorenzo. Rebirth's teeth clenched. He could feel the rage rising like a tide, drowning every trace of reason. "I'm coming for you," he muttered, his voice rough and hollow. "And this time, I'm not leaving without her." Within minutes, his convoy of black cars emerged from the fog behind him. His men, the most loyal and ruthless soldiers in his empire, followed without question. Each of them had seen their boss angry before, but never like this. The man they knew as cold, untouchable, was now something else, a storm wearing human skin. By the time they reached the edge of the city, the world had gone eerily quiet. The streets here were abandoned, half drowned in shadow. Ahead, an old sign flickered weakly in the rain. Motel Grace, vacancy, the last word barely hanging by a wire. The building loomed like a corpse, lifeless, forgotten, but Rebirth could feel it. She was in there. He didn't need proof. His blood knew. He could smell the faint trace of gun oil and smoke even through the rain. They were waiting for him. He stepped out of the car, his boots splashing into shallow puddles. His men formed a circle around him, weapons drawn, waiting for orders. "No one leaves that building alive," he said, his tone low, emotionless. "Not until I have her." The silence that followed was thick, the kind that pressed on the lungs. Then the first gunshot broke through the night, a flash from a window. One of his men dropped to his knees. "Sniper!" another shouted. Chaos erupted instantly. Bullets shredded the rain, ricocheting off metal and glass. Rebirth didn't flinch. He moved through the storm like a phantom, firing back with surgical precision. Every trigger he pulled was powered by memory. Her laughter, her tears, the night he left. The past burned behind every shot. He moved closer with each kill, step by step, fury cutting through the fear. Inside the motel, lights flickered from the gunfire. Shadows darted across the narrow hallways. His men stormed in behind him, the sound of boots echoing over the screams. Blood splattered the peeling wallpaper, the old wooden floorboards groaning under the weight of violence. A guard lunged from the darkness. Rebirth caught his wrist mid-air, twisted, and fired point blank. The man dropped instantly. "Where is she?" Rebirth hissed. The dying man only smirked through broken teeth. "He's already waiting." Rebirth kicked the body aside and kept moving. The motel smelled of mold and blood, a place that had seen too many sins. Every door he passed was locked, every corridor darker than the last. Then he saw it. Faint light spilling from a room at the far end. His pulse quickened. The door was cracked open, just slightly, like a cruel invitation. He gestured to his men to stay back. This was his. He needed to face whatever was inside alone. The gun in his hand felt heavy, but not as heavy as the fear pressing down on his heart. He pushed the door open. The sight froze him where he stood. Emily. She was sitting on the floor, her back against the wall, clutching the baby against her chest. Her eyes widened when she saw him. Disbelief, shock, and heartbreak all flashing at once. For a heartbeat, the world went still. The sound of rain outside faded, replaced by the soft, uneven breaths of mother and child. "Emily," his voice cracked. The name felt foreign after months of silence. Tears welled in her eyes instantly. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered, shaking her head. "They'll kill you if they find you here." He took one step closer, his gun lowering slightly. "You think I'd let them take my family?" She flinched at the word family. He saw the pain flicker across her face, not from fear of him, but from everything she had endured. Her lips trembled. "Rebirth, please. You don't understand. This isn't over. He'll never let me go." "I'm here now," he said softly, stepping closer, "and no one is taking you again." For a moment, she let herself believe him. Her shoulders trembled as she exhaled a breath that sounded like a sob. The baby stirred, whimpering softly in her arms. Rebirth's heart twisted at the sound. Fragile, innocent, a reminder of what he'd almost lost. He crouched in front of her, lowering his weapon completely. His hand reached out slowly, trembling slightly. "May I?" he whispered, motioning toward the child. Emily hesitated, fear and longing warring in her eyes, then finally nodded. He brushed the baby's tiny hand with his finger, and his throat closed. The child's skin was warm, his eyes barely open, but the faint reflection of Rebirth's gray gaze was unmistakable. He realized in that moment this child was his entire redemption, or his final punishment. Then a faint sound shattered the silence, the distinct click of a gun behind him. Rebirth froze. Instinct taking over, he didn't turn. Emily's eyes widened, her face draining of color. "Don't move!" A familiar voice drawled, smooth and cruel. Rebirth's body tensed. That voice, he would have recognized it anywhere. Lorenzo. He slowly turned his head, and there he was, stepping out from the shadows, drenched in calm malice. His suit was black, pristine despite the chaos, his smile sharp enough to cut glass. He held the gun steady, aimed directly at Emily's head. "Step away," Lorenzo said, his grin widening, "or this little reunion ends right now." Rebirth's jaw tightened. "You're a coward," he said through clenched teeth, "using her to hide from me." Lorenzo chuckled softly. "No, brother. I'm using her to destroy you, the same way you destroyed everything you touched." The baby whimpered again, breaking the tension, and Lorenzo's finger twitched on the trigger. Rebirth raised his weapon slowly, eyes locked on Lorenzo's. "If you hurt them," he said quietly, "I'll make sure you don't die quickly." Lorenzo's smirk didn't fade. "Then let's see," he whispered, cocking the gun. "Which of us loses everything first?" And in that suspended heartbeat, the storm outside roared louder, lightning flashing through the shattered window. Two brothers on opposite sides of the same tragedy, one ready to kill, the other ready to die. Lorenzo tilted his head slightly, his eyes gleaming with cruel delight, and then aimed the gun straight at Emily's head, smiling. 6. The gun's click echoed louder than thunder. The storm outside raged, lightning slicing through the broken window, but the real tempest was between the three of them. Rebirth, Emily, and the man who had once called him brother. Lorenzo's smile was carved with madness, his finger tightening on the trigger. "You never deserved her," he hissed, his voice trembling with obsession and hate. "You had everything. Power, loyalty, love, and you threw it away. But I was there when she cried your name in the dark." Rebirth's eyes darkened, a slow, lethal fury taking shape within him. "You used her pain to feed your jealousy," he growled. His body was still, but his heart was chaos, every muscle waiting for that one chance. Emily's trembling breath filled the air. She clutched the baby tighter, her tears falling silently, her lips forming a word that never came out. "Don't." The seconds stretched thin, fragile as glass. Then Lorenzo's grin faltered for a heartbeat. He shifted his aim, not at Rebirth, but at the baby in Emily's arms. "Let's end your bloodline where it started." The words shattered Rebirth's restraint. He moved before thought, a blur of desperation and rage. A single gunshot exploded in the room. Smoke swallowed the air. Emily screamed. The baby's cry cut through the chaos. Rebirth's body froze. The metallic scent of blood filled his lungs. When the haze cleared, Lorenzo lay on the floor, a crimson bloom spreading beneath him. His eyes were wide with shock, his smirk fading but not gone. Rebirth stood motionless, his gun still raised, smoke coiling from the barrel. His hand trembled. He wasn't sure if it was from adrenaline or the weight of what he had just done. Emily's scream tore through him, shaking him back to life. She crawled toward Lorenzo's fallen body, confusion and terror twisting across her face. "Rebirth, what have you done?" Lorenzo coughed, blood seeping from his mouth as he looked up at them with dying satisfaction. "You still don't know the truth, do you?" he rasped. Rebirth's grip tightened on the gun, not from threat, but fear of the answer he didn't want to hear. He knelt beside the man who had once been his brother. "What truth?" he demanded, his voice cracking, his face inches from Lorenzo's. The dying man smiled faintly, eyes glazed but cruelly aware. "That child," he whispered, coughing again, "isn't just yours." The words sank like bullets, slower but deadlier. Rebirth's pulse hammered in his ears, his heart twisted violently, torn between denial and dread. "You're lying," he growled, his voice low, dangerous. But Lorenzo's laugh, broken, blood-choked, crawled through the air like a haunting. "Am I?" Emily's face drained of color. She held the baby closer, her eyes darting between them. "Lorenzo, stop," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You don't know what you're saying." But the way she said it, the crack in her tone, made Rebirth's chest tighten with suspicion. He turned toward her slowly, his expression unreadable. "Emily, what does he mean?" She shook her head rapidly, tears streaking her cheeks. "Nothing. He's trying to destroy you, even now." Her voice broke, almost pleading. But Lorenzo chuckled again, each laugh weaker than the last. "She doesn't want you to know," he croaked. "Because if you knew what they did to her, you'd never forgive yourself." The storm outside roared, thunder masking Emily's soft sob, and Rebirth's world tilted again. He stepped closer to her, his shadow swallowing hers. "Emily," he said quietly, "look at me." She lifted her gaze, trembling, her lips parting to speak. But no words came. The baby stirred again, crying softly, as if sensing the darkness pressing around them. Rebirth's breath hitched. He could barely think, only feel. Rage, guilt, fear. The past and present were colliding in his chest like a car crash. Lorenzo coughed harder, his body twitching. "You left her," he rasped, "and you left your empire, so others took what you abandoned." His eyes flicked to the child, his grin cruel even as death crept in. "That baby carries more than your blood." Rebirth's jaw locked. He turned back to him. "What did you do?" Lorenzo's voice was fading, but the poison in it was strong. "You think power ends with you, brother? You think your enemies didn't want a piece of your legacy?" He smirked faintly. "They made sure she'd never truly escape your world, even if she thought she did." Rebirth's mind spun. The implications twisted like a blade. What had they done to Emily? He looked at her again. Her face, her trembling hands, her silence. Every second she didn't speak felt heavier than a bullet. "Emily," he said again, this time softer. "Please tell me." Her lips quivered. "I don't know everything," she whispered. "After you left, Lorenzo found me, but he wasn't alone. There were men. They took me somewhere. I barely remember what they did. All I know is that I woke up months later, pregnant." Rebirth's stomach twisted, his vision blurred with a mix of fury and horror. "You're saying—" he began. But the words wouldn't come. Emily shook her head frantically. "No, Rebirth. The baby is yours, I swear it. Lorenzo is lying. He always lied." But Lorenzo's last laugh broke through her words. "Maybe, maybe not, but you'll never be sure." His voice faded, breath shallower, until it was barely a whisper. "That's what will destroy you." Rebirth stared at him, at the smirk frozen on his dead face, and realized the worst kind of death was the one that left questions behind. The room fell silent again, except for the rain hammering the window and the baby's soft, rhythmic breathing. Emily was shaking uncontrollably now, torn between fear and relief that Lorenzo was gone. Rebirth stood, his mind burning, his chest tight. He holstered the gun but didn't look away from her. "We're leaving," he said, his tone sharp, final. Emily's head jerked up. "Where?" "Somewhere safe," he said, his eyes still clouded, "before the rest of them come." She hesitated, then nodded, standing weakly with the baby in her arms. But even as he led her toward the door, her thoughts weren't with escape. They were with the truth Lorenzo had left behind. She knew part of what Lorenzo said wasn't a lie, and that secret might destroy what little they had left. Rebirth pushed open the door, the night air slapping his face with cold rain. The motel lights flickered behind them like dying stars. He didn't look back, but in his mind, Lorenzo's voice wouldn't stop echoing. That child isn't just yours. The storm seemed to whisper it with every gust of wind. The shadows stretched long across the road, and for the first time, Rebirth felt something colder than fear crawling beneath his skin. Doubt. Emily followed silently, clutching the baby close to her chest. She could feel his turmoil, the tension in his stride. The man who once ruled the city like a god now looked like a ghost walking through his own nightmare. He didn't see the pair of headlights that appeared in the distance, slowly approaching, cutting through the rain. But Emily did, and her blood ran cold. Rebirth, she whispered, but he didn't turn. The sound of engines grew louder. Somewhere behind the storm, fate was moving again, and this time, it wasn't giving them a chance to breathe. The headlights stopped just meters away, and through the windshield, a figure stepped out, drenched in rain, holding something that glinted under the lightning. Rebirth's eyes narrowed. The past wasn't done with him yet. The rain poured harder, slicing through the darkness like shards of glass as Rebirth's hand tightened around his gun. The headlights that had stopped before them now dimmed, and the shadowed figure stepped closer, his boots splashing through puddles of mud and blood. Lightning illuminated the stranger's face for a brief second. One of Rebirth's old enforcers, a man he'd once trusted, now wearing the enemy's colors. "They're coming for you, boss," he said coldly. "The police, Lorenzo's men, everyone. You've got minutes before this place burns." Rebirth's jaw clenched, his instincts screaming. Behind him, Emily's shaky breath broke through the pounding rain. "We have to go," she whispered, clutching the baby tighter. Her face was pale, fear etched into every line. The thunder growled overhead, as if echoing the chaos inside them. Rebirth nodded sharply, eyes scanning the dark horizon. "Get in the car," he ordered. The man hesitated. "They'll trace it. You won't make it out alive." Rebirth's stare hardened, the cold authority returning, even through his storm of emotions. "Then we'll drive through the fire." The man stepped back, uncertainty flickering in his gaze. "You always were insane, boss," he muttered. But he turned and unlocked the car. Rebirth ushered Emily inside, the baby whimpering against her chest as she struggled to breathe steadily. The night was thick with fear, smoke, and the ghosts of everything they had lost. He slid into the driver's seat, hands trembling as he gripped the wheel. "Rebirth," Emily's voice cracked through the silence. "What did Lorenzo mean?" He didn't answer right away, eyes fixed on the rain-streaked windshield. The storm outside mirrored the one in his head. "That's what I'm going to find out," he said at last, his voice low, dangerous. "But first, I'll get you both out alive." She looked at him then. Really looked at him. Beneath the fury, she saw the man she had once loved, the man who had once kissed her, like the world wasn't burning around them. But that man now looked broken, every breath heavy with guilt. Her fingers trembled as she reached for him. "Rebirth, I never stopped loving you." He didn't respond, not because he didn't feel it, but because hearing it now felt like punishment. His heart ached, but his mind was already calculating, mapping their escape. The car roared to life, cutting through the darkness. As they sped away from the motel, flames burst behind them, devouring what was left of the nightmare. Emily turned to look back one last time, the place where Lorenzo had died and where her past had been buried in fire. "What did he mean?" Rebirth asked again, his tone sharp, desperate now that they were finally alone. Emily's breath hitched. "He was lying," she whispered, but her voice shook. "Don't lie to me, Emily," he said, his grip tightening on the wheel. "He said the child wasn't just mine. I need to know what he meant." Her tears blurred her vision. "When you left me," she began softly, "I didn't know where to go. Lorenzo found me before anyone else did. I tried to run, but he locked me away. He said I would give birth to the heir of your empire. He wanted to use me to control what you built." Rebirth's jaw clenched. "And the baby?" Emily looked down at the child, her tears falling onto the baby's small blanket. "He's yours, Rebirth," she said, her voice breaking. "No matter what they did to me, I know it's you. I feel it." His heart squeezed painfully. He wanted to believe her, wanted to let that truth drown out everything else, but Lorenzo's dying smirk kept replaying in his head. "You're sure?" he asked, voice tight. "You're absolutely sure?" Emily nodded, crying harder. "Yes, I swear it. He wanted to take everything from you, even this, but he failed." Her voice trembled, but there was conviction behind it. Rebirth's eyes softened, just for a moment. He reached out and brushed her cheek with his thumb, wiping away her tears. "Then we'll end this," he whispered, "for good." She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch for one fleeting heartbeat, a fragile moment of warmth in a world full of shadows. But then, the sound of distant sirens shattered it. Blue and red lights flared through the rain, reflecting off the rearview mirror. Rebirth cursed under his breath. "They found us!" Emily turned, panic flooding her face. "But we didn't do anything." "They don't care," he cut in coldly. "Lorenzo's death was staged. They'll make sure it looks like I killed him out of jealousy." "You didn't?" she asked weakly. His silence answered for him. He stepped harder on the gas, the car racing down the wet road as police lights glowed brighter behind them. The tires screamed against the asphalt, the rain blurring everything into chaos. Emily held the baby close, whispering prayers between sobs. The sirens grew louder, closer, until the wail was all around them. Rebirth swerved sharply, taking a hidden turn that only someone who once ruled the city's underworld would know. They raced through narrow streets, splashing through puddles and shadows until the lights behind them began to fade. Emily exhaled shakily, clutching the baby tighter. "Did we lose them?" Rebirth didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the road ahead, jaw set, heart pounding. The weight of guilt, love, and loss pressed down like a vice. "We'll find a safe house," he said finally. "Then we'll plan our next move." But fate wasn't done with them yet. From the rooftop above, unseen in the rain, a scope glinted, a sniper's barrel aligning perfectly with the car below. Emily shifted slightly, glancing out the window. Something flickered in her vision, a flash of metal. "Rebirth," she said, her voice barely audible. "Don't stop, just drive." He frowned, confused. "Why?" But before she could answer, a sharp crack split the night. A gunshot louder than thunder. Glass shattered. Rebirth slammed on the brakes, the car screeching to a halt. "Emily!" he shouted. She gasped, her hand flying to her side, crimson blooming beneath her fingers. The baby wailed as she collapsed against the seat. "No, no, no!" Rebirth's voice broke, his hands trembling as he caught her before she fell completely. "Stay with me." She tried to speak, blood on her lips. "Rebirth." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Don't let them take him." He pulled her close, his own tears mixing with the rain pouring through the shattered window. The sirens were growing louder again. He could hear them closing in, but all he saw was her face, pale, fragile, fading. "Emily, stay with me," he begged, his words breaking apart. "You hear me? Stay with me." Her eyes fluttered, locking on his one last time. "I love you," she breathed. Then her body went still. Rebirth froze, staring at her lifeless form, his world shattering in silence. The storm outside roared, but inside him, everything went numb. He pressed his forehead against hers, his tears falling onto her cold skin. "I swear," he whispered, his voice hollow, "I'll find whoever did this." Then another shot rang out, this time shattering the mirror beside his head. He turned sharply, rage blazing through his veins. He gently laid Emily's body down, grabbed the gun, and kicked open the car door, stepping into the downpour. His eyes burned red with fury. Scanning the rooftops, the shadows. "You picked the wrong night," he growled, lifting the gun. Lightning flashed, illuminating a figure retreating into the darkness. Rebirth fired once, twice, his shots echoing through the night, but the assassin was gone. He dropped to his knees beside the car, chest heaving, rain mingling with blood at his feet. Behind him, the baby cried, a sound that tore through the ruins of his soul. He turned, gathering the child into his arms. "I've got you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I've got you." He looked down at Emily's lifeless face one last time, the promise already forming in his heart, one that would drag him deeper into the darkness than ever before. As he stood, lightning split the sky once more, revealing a shadow moving far down the alley, holding a silenced rifle and a phone to his ear. Rebirth's eyes locked on that figure through the rain, and every instinct in him screamed the same name: Lorenzo's brother. The storm swallowed the night, and the world fell silent except for the cry of the child and the echo of vengeance being born in Rebirth's heart. The night screamed with sirens and rain as Rebirth fell to his knees, Emily's limp body collapsing into his arms. Time fractured. Everything slowed until even the rain seemed to pause above them. Her blood, warm and real, spread across his hands like a curse he could never wash away. His voice broke through the storm, raw and desperate. "Emily, look at me, please." But her eyelids fluttered weakly, her breath trembling as if every inhale was a war she was losing. The world around them blurred, gunshots in the distance, tires screeching, shadows running. But for him, there was only her. Only the faint heartbeat he prayed wouldn't fade. He lifted her into his arms, ignoring the sting of bullets grazing his shoulder. His men rushed toward him, but he barked, "Cover me!" The command came out as a roar, part rage, part fear. And they obeyed instantly. Through the rain and chaos, he carried her like something sacred, her blood dripping with every step. The motel burned behind them, flames devouring the memories they could never reclaim. Somewhere in that inferno lay the ghosts of every mistake he'd ever made. The empire that had once defined him, now meaningless. By the time he reached the old safe house hidden in the woods, his strength was nearly gone. The house was silent, a relic from his past, a place where Emily once laughed, where sunlight used to pour through the cracked windows. Now it smelled of dust and despair. He laid her gently on the couch, his fingers trembling as he brushed the hair from her face. Her skin was cold, her lashes damp. "Stay with me," he whispered, his voice shaking. "You can't leave me now. Not when I finally found you again." Emily tried to smile, though her lips quivered with pain. "Don't cry, Rebirth." Her voice was barely a breath, fading between heartbeats. "You finally found me." Tears slid down his cheeks, silent but endless. No one had ever seen the Mafia king cry. But now the man beneath the legend was breaking apart piece by piece. He held her hand tightly, pressing it to his chest as if his heartbeat could pull her back to life. "You were never my weakness," he murmured, forehead resting against hers. "You were my reason to live, my only reason." Her eyes shimmered with the faintest light of peace. "Then live for us," she whispered, her words trembling but full of love. Her hand fell from his chest slowly, and in that moment, the world shattered. The sound of her last breath echoed louder than thunder. He froze, unable to accept what his heart already knew. The rain stopped. The wind died. The silence screamed louder than any war he'd ever fought. Rebirth, the man who had survived bullets, betrayal, and hell itself, broke down beside her, his sobs filling the small room. He sat there all night, her hand still in his his eyes lost in the darkness. He didn't move when the dawn broke, didn't flinch when sunlight crept across the floor and touched her face one last time. The empire he once ruled no longer mattered. Money, power, revenge, they had all burned away, leaving only her memory behind. Somewhere in that morning quiet, he made his choice. He rose slowly, eyes hollow but calm, kissed her forehead one last time and whispered, "You'll never be alone again." That day, the Mafia world trembled. The man known as Rebirth, ruthless, untouchable, feared by all, vanished. His empire crumbled into silence, his name whispered only in grief and awe. Some said he took his own life beside her grave. Others claimed he disappeared into the shadows, living only to protect the child they left behind. But no one truly knew the truth. Only that his reign ended not with war, but with love. Years passed. Seasons turned. The underworld rebuilt itself under a new leader, a boy with the same gray eyes that once held fury and love in equal measure. His name was whispered with reverence and fear, the young king. He stood tall at the head of Rebirth's empire, sharper than his father, calmer than the storm that created him. Every movement he made carried a ghost of the man who came before him, the quiet strength, the gaze that could cut through lies, the ache of love unspoken. One evening, as the sun dipped beyond the skyline, the boy sat alone in his father's old office. Dust swirled through the golden light, landing softly on the desk, a desk once drenched in blood, now buried under files of redemption. There, among the papers, lay an envelope sealed with crimson wax. His hands trembled as he opened it, revealing a note written in elegant handwriting, edges worn with time. He read it once, then again, and with every word something in his chest stirred, a legacy, a promise, a heartbeat from the past. The note said, "Every story of love and pain is reborn, just like you, my rebirth." The boy's eyes glistened. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Not a storm of destruction, but one of renewal. He placed the note gently back on the desk, looked out over the city his father once ruled, and whispered, "I'll make you proud." Lightning illuminated his reflection in the glass, the same sharp jawline, the same haunted eyes. But where his father's gaze carried regret, his carried resolve. The empire would rise again, but this time built not on vengeance, but on love remembered. And as the first drops of rain touched the window, somewhere beyond the storm, a whisper echoed, soft, eternal, and full of peace. Love never dies. It's reborn. The candle flickered beside the note, and for a moment the ink shimmered, as if newly written, as though Rebirth himself had just returned. Every empire falls, but some hearts rise from the ashes. If love could survive betrayal, bullets, and blood, would you still call it love or destiny? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-wrenching tales of love, loss, and rebirth, only on Heart Woven Tales.